We have limited resources because of scarcity. And this scarcity then forces us to make choices. And economics is basically the study of these choices. But whenever we make a choice, we have to give up something. So we always face trade-offs. Now, suppose we have two factors of production, capital and labor. Suppose capital is fixed while labor is variable. This means that machines are specific to each industry, while workers can move from one industry to another industry. As a worker leaves the widget industry for the gadget industry, the economy can produce more gadgets but fewer widgets. That's the trade-off. In fact, the additional worker in the gadget industry will increase gadget production by the marginal product of labor. But due to the law of diminishing returns, or the law of diminishing marginal product, the extra output produced by the last worker decreases. That is why the production function that you can see right here has the shape it has. It is increasing at a decreasing rate. That means that the slope of the production function becomes flatter and flatter, and the slope is the marginal product of labor. As workers move from one industry to another industry, we can trace out all the possible combinations of widgets and gadgets that our economy can produce, given our resources and technology. That is, we can trace out the production possibilities frontier. The slope of the PPF shows the trade-off. How many units of widgets must be given up in order to produce one more gadget? That is, the slope shows the opportunity cost. And when we consider producing one more gadget, then the opportunity cost is also called the marginal cost. Note that where on the PPF we are is determined by our taste and preferences. Right now, you can see the point that our preferences have, the choice between gadgets and widgets that our economy would like to consume. Now, once we know where on the PPF we will be, we know what the opportunity cost is, and therefore we know what the marginal cost will be in this equilibrium. Now, if we know the price of capital and the price of labor, we can use these concepts to trace out the marginal cost, the average variable cost, and the average total cost curves. They will look just like this for a firm that produces gadgets. These are the cost curves that determine firm behavior, and the goal of the firm is to maximize its profit. Remember that the firm, like people, since firms are owned by people, has an incentive to produce more of a good if the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. For the firm, the marginal benefit of production is the marginal revenue it receives from selling its good. This is the MR. And the marginal cost is, as we have just described, what they give up when they produce one more unit of this particular good. So a firm will always produce output up until the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. This is the best or the most efficient outcome for the firm. This is the outcome that maximizes the firm's profit. Now, we know about marginal cost, but what about marginal revenue? What determines what the marginal revenue will be for the firm? Well, the answer is the market structure. In particular, whether it is a competitive market or a monopoly. If it's a perfectly competitive market, we'll have many buyers, many sellers, and all the sellers will sell almost the same or exactly the same good, and we're going to have free entry and exit. Of course, if it's a monopoly, there will be many buyers, but only one seller. And of course, that seller will sell his or her good. And very importantly, there is no entry into the monopoly. So even if firms would like to enter the monopoly because they make profit there, they cannot. Now, the assumption of many sellers and all the sellers selling the same good means that all producers will be price takers. And the assumption on the perfect competition of free entry and exit means that in the long run, there will be zero economic profit. In a perfectly competitive market, there are many firms, and they all produce an identical product. This means that no firm can raise its price. Because if one firm were to raise its price, then all buyers will just buy the good from some other producer. So they stuck with the price that the market gives them. This is why we call them price takers. And of course, as you see, the price they take is given is the market price, the intersection between market demand and market supply. This is then the extra revenue, the price, is then the extra revenue that a firm receives when selling its good. So the competitive firm produces the quantity for which price equals marginal cost. Now, if something happens to the market price due to a change in market demand or a change in market supply, then firms will change their behavior in the short run. For example, if there's an increase in demand, then we would expect the market price to increase, and the firm will then change its behavior in response to this increase in market price. We would expect them to produce more and therefore actually make a positive profit in the short run. But the free entry and exit, and in this case free entry, will ensure that more firms enter this industry to take advantage of the profits that the firm is making. And of course, as more firms enter the market, we expect the supply curve to shift outward, the supply to increase. And firms will keep entering this market and thus shifting out the supply curve until the price has gone down all the way back to what the price was in the original equilibrium. And of course, as firms enter, the price goes down and the firm's profits decreases. And again, you can see that the firms stop entering when the profit is back to being zero. This is going to be a long-run outcome for the competitive firm. Now, what about the monopoly? With only one firm, consumers do not have a choice, and therefore the firm has monopoly power. That is, the firm has the power to set the price. And the monopolist will set this price as high as possible. But as high as possible is going to be equal to consumers' willingness to pay for any given quantity. Remember, the demand curve is the consumer's willingness to pay. So whatever quantity the monopolist would like to produce and sell, the price they charge is going to be equal to what consumers are willing to pay according to the demand curve. But what quantity will the monopolist produce? Well, again, the same rule. The monopolist produce the quantity for which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. But here's the difference. For the monopolist, the marginal revenue is not equal to the price, because in order to sell one more unit, the monopolist will have to lower its price, not only for the last unit, but for all the previous units as well. This means that a monopolist cannot price discriminate. A price discrimination means that you could charge a different price to different consumers, but here we assume that monopolists will have to charge the same price for everybody. Now you can see then in this numerical example that if the price is $5.10, the monopolist can sell 9 units. And if we multiply price and quantity, we get the total revenue equals $45.90. Now, if the monopolist would like to sell a 10th unit, then they would have to lower the price to $5. Not just for the last unit, but for all units. And therefore, total revenue will be equal to 5 times 10 equals 50. And the marginal revenue, which is this change in revenue when the monopolist increase output by 1, will be equal to $4.10. And also, if the monopolist would like to sell 11 units, they would have to lower the price to $4.90. Total revenue will be equal to $53.90, meaning that the marginal revenue is $3.90. You can see that the marginal revenue is less than the price charged by the monopolist. If we draw that into our diagram, you can see that the marginal revenue curve will always be below the demand curve. The firm, the monopolist, will also always use the rule that they will produce the quantity for which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So here you can see that where that intersection occurs, that's going to be the quantity produced by the monopolist, QM. But then you're going to go straight up to the demand curve to find out how much consumers are willing to pay for that quantity. And that's going to be the monopolist price. And then if you take the price minus the average cost, and you multiply that by the quantity produced, we will have profits, the monopolist profits. But, even though the monopolist is making profits, no firm can enter the market because there are some barriers to entry here. And therefore, the monopolist will be able to make these positive profits in the long run. So the conclusion for the monopolist is going to be that a monopolist, they produce a lower quantity, they charge a higher price, and they make positive profits in the long run. And because the price is not equal to marginal cost, this is going to be an inefficient outcome.